Greetings, War Thunderers. This is Longshot with you again. In this video I'll be reviewing the Tier 2 Macchi 202 Folgore as next in my series on neglected arcade fighter planes. Let's look at its armament first, 230 cal and two nose-mounted 50 cal machine guns. The 50s had a slow rate of fire and low muzzle velocity, but made up for this with high explosive incendiary rounds. Here's a British fighter pilot discussing a battle in which the effect of these rounds was evident. He said, "I could smell the incendiary and explosive as they hit. Another hit my main spar about 1 foot from the wing root and almost blew it apart. The wing surface was blown open about 6 inches on either side of the strike. That's a hole of about 1 foot or 30 centimetres wide, the kind of damage you'd associate with cannon." Do we see ammo belts in War Thunder that reflect this? Well, let's take a look. Firstly, with the 30 cal, I've chosen universal, which seems to give the best chance of setting things alight. And in the 50 cals I'm most interested in these. If we look through the belts, there are none containing high explosive shells. The closest we have is IAI, or Immediate Action Incendiary, but it's lousy, so I've ended up choosing traces. I don't want you to be under any illusions about this plane, so I'll start off the video by showing its downsides. To begin, let's look at how we'd expect this plane to handle. Now, the same pilot said the enemy flew in high and low groups. His Hurricanes entered a chaotic turn fight with the lower group. But the other 202s had stayed high, and were using energy tactics, so the 202 was a very versatile plane. So enough with the history lessons. How does it fly in War Thunder? If implemented accurately, we'd expect this plane to be a phenomenal fighter. We'd definitely expect it to be able to dogfight a MiG-3, which was strictly a high-altitude interceptor with poor turning abilities. Anyway, this is one of the first battles I flew after accepting the challenge to fly the 202. So my engine's underpowered as the plane is close to stock, so I don't expect to hold my altitude advantage over the MiG-3 for long. I've hopefully reduced his speed enough to make a hammerhead and attack him. He couldn't get his guns on me, and I hit him with a raking burst, but no damage done. So after extending away, I'm climbing for another attempt. He dives to gain speed and then climbs up after me. My underpowered plane nears its stall speed, so I have to cross his line of flight, hoping to soak up his energy as he follows me. But he's getting guns on me first, so I need to duck under his bullets and extend away again. If my plane was fully researched, he wouldn't have outclimbed me like that, but now I have no choice but to look to start a turn fight. So I'm ducking under his line of fire again, and we're ready to go. Now, I'm not even beginning to outturn him. My elevators are very weak. Remember how lousy a turner the MiG-3 is. So the 202 cannot turn with a MiG-3, which means it certainly can't out-turn fight Hurricanes as it did horizontally. So I've given up on that, and I'm cutting the engines to initiate a horizontal scissors and hopefully force him to overshoot. One thing is the roll speed. It's exceptional. I'm wondering if this plane is using a borrowed flight model from the Focke-Wulf 190. So as he's passing me, I'm immediately switching onto his heading, and somehow my propeller survives this, and now the reversal's complete. There's no escape for him now, so eventually I clip his tail enough to force him down. I was lucky that he didn't spot my throttling back, which is what led to the reversal, otherwise I'd have been toast. So basically this plane cannot be used in close quarters dogfighting. So now my plane's fully upgraded, and this clip demonstrates the problem with its ammunition. That's a lot of bullets fired at close range, with nothing to show for it. It's a very common experience with this plane. In this example, I was asleep at the wheel and I didn't notice how close that Heinkel 112 had come, and as a result I'm lucky to survive. Anyway, I swoop in as he stalls and hit him with a nice burst. Great, he's on fire, and probably, yep, falling out of the sky. So that's a certain kill, right? Well, not with your typical arcade team member lurking below it, isn't. Well, I shouldn't be angry, perhaps he needed it more than I did. Anyway, this time I'll dive onto a target, hitting his full cockpit exposed profile with a sustained burst. Yep, just another critical. And I see a Ki-10 closing in and decide to go head on. After all, it's only a biplane with weak machine guns. But here's another fault in this plane. You'll die from pilot kills incredibly often. So you can never go head on against any fighter. In this example, I'm performing another boom and zoom, using the plane's speed. But the bullets are very ineffective until you get close, which gives you very little time to shoot at targets effectively. So that's a very common outcome of boom and zooming. But I forget to check my 6 before climbing, and a lag's followed me in the dive and is now intercepting my climb. And he's destroyed my elevators. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's another thing I've noticed is common with this plane. It's very fragile. You have to fly extremely defensively. So, anyway, we're now 8 minutes into the video and all I've shown you are problems. The plane can't turn, it struggles to get kills, dies very easily. So what's it good for? How can it best be used? Well, its strengths are speed, acceleration, energy retention and climb rate. To use those strengths, you must take this plane up to altitude wherever possible. Look how quickly I'm closing in on this Wildcat, just after a shallow dive, and I'm only flying level. Now he's focused on attacking bombers, so I can hit him with a sustained burst. And that's why I use tracers. It's much more likely to set things ablaze than anything else with this plane, in my experience. So his tail control's gone, which usually means a sure kill for me. If he'd evaded away, I could have used my speed to extend and then climb and reset for a new attack from a safe distance. You have to think in terms of hit and run against enemy fighters, unless you're rope-a-doping them. Remember, the 202 climbs better than even BF-109 ML series. So the guy I shot down is down there in another F4F, and there's a good chance he'll climb back up, so I'm keeping a close eye on him. He's taking his time, so I'll switch to the TBF. You should never go head on against any dive bomber. but they're usually a target you can kill or force into diving early. Like most bombers, you want to attack from the side or from underneath. Now I'll give him a wide berth before turning in for another attack, just in case he'd try to evade me. And being careful like this, you can indeed get kills. I'm keeping my speed as high as possible. And now I switch to the Wildcat. He's exhausted his speed climbing, so I'm diving at him, and sometimes you have no option but to dive on enemies, even though it rarely results in kills with this plane. So he's still trying to climb, so I can come back for another pass. Notice I'm spamming WEP as much as possible. Okay, couldn't get the kill, but he's been forced to dive away, which is the next best outcome. At this battle rating, there is nothing capable of taking altitude supremacy from a fully upgraded 202, not as long as you're careful. So here's another dive bomber. Now I'm approaching from slightly below because I want to try and deter him from diving. Which works, but I can't follow him in his climb, and Dauntless are superb low-speed dogfighters, so I need to extend out of reach before turning back for another pass at him. And that gives him the opportunity to dive away. Such is life. I'm not going to follow him. Now watch this Su-2 easily outturn me when I try to quickly follow him as he goes past. Oh, that Wildcat must have crashed on landing. Yes, thank you, I'll take that kill. Take everything you can get in this plane. Looks like that Su-2 is harassing my bombers, but he has not got the speed to escape me. Now watch how much speed I retain in this turn. In fact, I gain speed. So at this point in the game, my airfield's being bombed. So if possible, I must find and stop the culprit or we'll lose this battle. And there he is up there. Now this was made even more interesting by the H6K pilot trying to make it difficult for me to get clean attacking runs on him. He was trying to fly away from me as much as possible to give his tail 20mm cannon a chance to take me out, which I had to be extremely careful of. When I did get beside him, he'd turn and fly at me, and so reduce the amount of time I had to hit him with a good volley. As you can see, I end up in a scissors battle with a H6K, which he ended up winning. Now here I get a shot at him from behind, and I do take it for a few seconds, which is very risky, knowing how fragile my plane is. but it looks like I knocked his cannon out of action, so now I can attack a bit more freely. But he's diving away again, and I've barely even scratched his paintwork. So the key for me is getting a good shot at his engines. A fire is usually death for a H6K. And there we go. I had to follow him down given the state of the game. If I'd stayed high then, I would have just been surrendering a victory to the other team. So that puts me at relatively low altitude, where I need to be now because the enemy is now making a run on our remaining ground targets. And I see that TBF down there hunting tanks and pillboxes. Low altitude is not the best place for a 202, and I've picked up unwelcome company. I can't dogfight, I'm fragile. I have no option but to run guns defense, knowing that any hit can kill my elevators or my pilot. I'm keeping my movements subtle, my speed as high as possible. I'm hoping that my plane is able to outrun the lag. Which it has. He's still spraying away at me from long range, but looks like I'm free of him. So now I'm hoping that he'll switch to that friendly SPD, which he does, and that gives me an opportunity to attack him in return. And look at that, his wing ripped off. I don't believe it. So what enabled me to achieve that kill streak? It wasn't skillful flying. It was sticking steadfastly to the plane's strengths, maintaining altitude and high speed, refusing to dogfight, and keeping constant watch on my surroundings. In some maps you won't be able to fly as high, either because there's a domination or because there's cloud cover, but still you've got to keep as much height as is practical while being involved in the game, and maintain it and your speed at all times. This plane will frustrate you no end, especially if you like just pointing, shooting and instant killing enemies as you can with planes like BF-110. It will, however, force you to learn the principles of energy fighting and the discipline of sticking to what a plane's good at. It'll make you a better pilot. So I started with a stock level plane with the 7 deaths and 1 kill I'd achieved a year ago. Even with all the 202's difficulties, I was able to fully research the plane, and had another 35 kills at a cost of only 8 more deaths. I'm not an exceptional pilot, and I play on an Australian ping, so this is something anyone can do with a bit of practice. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've enjoyed making it, and I'll see you in the next one.